Close your eyes, just for a moment. I need you to see something. I want you to imagine a garden, not a wild, overgrown tangle of weeds and chaos. I mean a real garden, vast, rich, dark soil that has never been poisoned, never been exhausted. Soil so fertile, so magnificently receptive, that anything you plant in it will grow. There are no bad seeds and good seeds to this garden. It does not sort. It does not judge. It does not look at what you drop into it and say, "Are you sure about this? Do you really want this to grow?" It simply receives. And then it grows. Now, standing at the edge of this garden is a man, the captain. And the captain has one job. One sacred, consequential job. Every single day he walks to the edge of that garden and he plants something. A thought, a belief, an image, a feeling. He drops it into the soil and then he walks away. He doesn't stay to watch. He doesn't supervise the growing. He simply plants, and the garden does the rest. Now here is the question I want you to hold in your mind like a lantern. What has your captain been planting? Because here is what I discovered, and this is the discovery that reorganized everything I thought I understood about human life. That garden is your subconscious mind. And that captain? That is your conscious mind. Your thinking, reasoning, choosing, daily waking self. The part of you that is sitting in this room right now, listening to these words. Every single thought you think with conviction, every image you hold with feeling, every belief you repeat until it sinks below the surface of your awareness. That is a seed, dropped into soil that never refuses, into a garden that never sleeps. Your subconscious mind does not rest when you do. It does not clock out at midnight and clock back in at 7. It is always working, always growing whatever was last planted with enough feeling and enough repetition to take root. And most people, most brilliant, sincere, hard-working people, have spent their entire lives planting fear, planting doubt, planting "I'm not enough," planting "this always happens to me," planting "people like us don't get things like that." And then they stand at the edge of their own garden, bewildered, heartbroken, exhausted, wondering why thorns keep growing where they wanted roses. I remember sitting with a woman once, a school teacher from Dublin, sharp as a blade, warm as sunlight. She came to me because her life had become a pattern she couldn't break. Every relationship ended the same way. Every financial opportunity slipped through her fingers at the last moment. Every time she got close to something good, something seemed to pull it away. She said to me, "Dr. Murphy, I must be cursed." And I looked at her very steadily and I said, "You are not cursed. You are simply harvesting what was planted long ago." She didn't like that answer. Not at first. But here is what we uncovered together. When she was 9 years old, her mother, not cruelly but carelessly, the way tired and overwhelmed people sometimes are, had told her, "Pretty things aren't for us, sweetheart. Don't get your hopes up." 9 years old. One sentence. Planted in the garden of a child's subconscious mind, which, in childhood, has almost no protective barrier at all. Children are pure garden, almost no captain. They absorb everything. Everything. That seed had been growing inside her for 37 years. And every time she approached something good, her own subconscious mind faithfully, loyally, devotedly doing its job, had grown that belief into a wall she couldn't see but could never get past. She wasn't cursed. She was programmed. And here is the staggering, breathtaking, life-changing truth. Programs can be rewritten. Now I need you to understand something about the captain. Something that most people miss entirely, and missing it is the source of almost all human suffering. The captain has authority. Real authority. The subconscious cannot override the conscious mind when the conscious mind is deliberate. The garden grows what is planted. It does not choose the seeds. That power belongs entirely to the captain. But here is where it gets complicated. Here is where most people unknowingly surrender their authority without realizing it. The captain gives his orders in two ways. The first way is intentional. He stands at the edge of the garden, deliberate and awake, and plants with purpose. This is what we do when we pray with understanding, when we meditate with focused imagery, when we speak to ourselves with conscious, chosen conviction. The second way is accidental. And this is the way most people operate for most of their lives. The captain is distracted. He is watching the news and absorbing fear. He is replaying old arguments in his mind with full emotional charge, planting resentment. He is lying awake at 3 a.m. running disaster scenarios with vivid, feeling-soaked imagination, planting catastrophe. He doesn't realize he's planting. He thinks he's just thinking. But the garden doesn't know the difference between intentional planting and accidental planting. It only knows a seed arrived with feeling attached to it. Grow. And so it grows. Ask yourself right now, honestly, without flinching. What have you been thinking about most, with the most feeling, over the last year of your life? Not what you've been saying. Not what you've been posting. Not the face you show the world. What have you been genuinely, deeply, repetitively feeling and thinking in the private theater of your own mind? Because that, precisely that, is what your subconscious has been faithfully, expertly, powerfully growing. This is not punishment. This is not fate. This is not God deciding you deserve less. This is law. The same law that makes water run downhill. The same law that makes the sun rise. Impersonal. Precise. Magnificent in its consistency. It does not punish the ignorant and reward the wise. It simply operates on everyone, always, without exception. The ignorant suffer not because the law is cruel, but because they are working against it without knowing it exists. The moment you understand the law, truly understand it, not just intellectually nod at it, you stop fighting the current. You learn to swim with it. And the same force that was pushing against you begins to carry you. The garden is always growing. The question has never been, will it grow? The question, the only question that has ever mattered, is what are you planting? Because you are the captain. You have always been the captain. And the moment you take that wheel with conscious, deliberate, understanding hands, the garden begins to change. Not someday. Not eventually. From the very next seed you plant. Now, I used the word belief just then. And I need to stop there. Because when I say belief, I don't mean what you think I mean. I don't mean the comfortable Sunday morning everything will work out feeling that most people call belief. I mean something far more precise, far more powerful, and far more honest. I mean the belief that lives below what you say, in the place where your subconscious actually takes its orders from. And that is where we are going next. You've been lied to. Not by your enemies, by the voice you trust most. Your own. And I don't say that to wound you. I say it because until you see it clearly, until you hold it up in the light and look at it without flinching, you cannot change it. And changing it is exactly why we are here. Now, when I use the word belief, I want you to forget every soft, comfortable, vague meaning that word has collected over the years. Forget the greeting card version. Forget the motivational poster on the wall that says "Believe in yourself" in elegant cursive above a picture of a mountain. That is not what I am talking about. What I am talking about is something cellular, something that lives not in your words, not in your declarations, but in the marrow of your assumptions about reality. The belief I am talking about is not what you say you believe. It is what your body responds to, what your nervous system organizes itself around, what your subconscious receives as its standing orders, day after day, year after year, regardless of what your mouth is saying. Let me show you the difference. And I want you to feel this, not just understand it. A man comes to me, desperate, sincere. He has been repeating affirmations every morning for 6 months, standing in front of his mirror, looking himself in the eye, saying, "I am wealthy. Abundance flows to me. I am a magnet for success." 6 months, every single morning, without fail. And nothing has changed. He sits across from me with this look, half exhausted, half angry, and he says, "Dr. Murphy, I've done everything right. Why isn't it working?" And I ask him one question, just one. "When you say those words, what do you feel?" He goes quiet. And then, very slowly, he says, "Honestly, I feel foolish." There it is, right there. That is the entire answer. Because you see, the subconscious mind is not a machine that processes words. It is not impressed by syllables. It does not count how many times you repeated a phrase or how early you woke up to say it. The subconscious mind responds to one thing and one thing only: the feeling behind the thought, the emotion, the inner conviction, the thing that is actually happening beneath the performance of positive thinking. That man was saying "I am wealthy" with his lips, while his deeper mind was radiating the feeling of "This is ridiculous and I know it." And the subconscious, faithful, precise, obedient as always, was acting on the feeling, not the words. Never the words alone. Always the feeling. Now here is where the law of belief becomes both terrifying and magnificent. Whatever you believe, truly believe, at the level of feeling and deep inner assumption, your subconscious will work with the absolute dedication of a master architect to make that belief your reality. Not because it is punishing you, not because it is rewarding you, simply because that is its nature. It is a creative medium. It takes the blueprint it is given, and it builds. Give it a blueprint of scarcity, and it will find with almost eerie precision every way to manifest scarcity in your life. It will make you blind to opportunities. It will sabotage relationships that could elevate you. It will cause you to make decisions that confirm what it already believes to be true, because the subconscious is always trying to create consistency between your inner world and your outer experience. Give it a blueprint of abundance, genuine, felt, embodied abundance, and watch what happens. Doors open that you didn't know existed. People appear at precisely the right moment. Ideas arrive in the night that solve problems you'd been wrestling with for years. Coincidences stack up so perfectly that you begin to wonder if something magnificent is conspiring in your favor. It is. You are. I want to tell you about a period in my own life when I learned this law the hard way. I had been ill. Seriously ill. The kind of illness that puts a ceiling on your ambitions and a question mark over your future. And I did what most educated, reasonable people do when they are frightened. I thought about it constantly. I analyzed it. I researched it. I discussed it. I carried it with me everywhere like a stone in my coat pocket. And every time I thought about it, I felt afraid. Every time I felt afraid, I planted another seed of fear into that garden. And the garden grew fear. I was not a stupid man. I understood medicine. I understood psychology. I had read more books on the mind than most people read in a lifetime. And still, I was doing it. Feeding the very thing I was trying to defeat with the most potent fertilizer in existence, emotionally charged, repetitive thought. The turning point came not from a doctor, not from a new treatment. It came from a moment of absolute clarity in which I understood, truly understood for the first time, that my belief about my condition was as much a part of my condition as the condition itself. I stopped talking about it. I stopped thinking about it with dread. I began, deliberately, consciously, with enormous initial effort, to hold a different image. Not denial. Not pretending. But a genuine, chosen, practiced redirection of what I was planting. I began to feel well, before I was well. I began to speak to my subconscious at night, in that drowsy, receptive state just before sleep, and I would say, quietly, with feeling, with as much genuine conviction as I could muster, every cell in my body is intelligent. My subconscious knows how to heal. I am being restored, not screaming it, not performing it, feeling it, as best I could, one night at a time. And the body responded. I am not standing here tonight as a miracle. I am standing here as a man who learned, at great personal cost, that the law of belief is not a metaphor. It is not poetry. It is not wishful thinking wearing a spiritual costume. It is law. Now I need you to do something uncomfortable. I need you to ask yourself, right now in the privacy of your own chest, what do you actually believe about yourself? Not what you wish you believed. Not what you're working toward believing. What do you currently, at the level of deep feeling and long-held assumption, actually believe? Do you believe you are worthy of great love, or do you believe, somewhere below the surface, that people always leave? Do you believe abundance is your natural state, or do you believe, in that quiet place you rarely examine, that money is hard and life is a struggle and people like you don't really win? Do you believe your health can be magnificent, or have you quietly accepted a story of decline? Because whatever your honest answer is, that is your current blueprint. That is what is being handed to the garden every single day. And here is what I need you to understand with every fiber of your being. A blueprint can be changed, not wished away. Not affirmationed away in 6 minutes a morning while your deeper mind rolls its eyes, but genuinely, structurally, permanently changed through the precise application of mental and spiritual laws that are as real as gravity and as available as the air you're breathing right now. The law of belief is not working against you. It has never been working against you. It has been working for you, perfectly, loyally, without a single day off, building exactly what you gave it to build. The moment you change what you give it, everything changes. But here is the question that naturally arises, and it's the right question, so I'm glad you're asking it. If the subconscious is this powerful, where does that power come from? What is the source? What is the engine beneath the engine? What is the intelligence that animates this extraordinary creative medium we call the subconscious mind? That question led me to one of the most profound discoveries of my life, and it happened on a night in London when I had nothing left and something answered. There was a night in London when I completely fell apart. I don't use that phrase loosely. I mean it in the most literal, human, unglamorous way possible. I was sitting alone in a small room, bare walls, one lamp, rain against the window, and I had run out of answers. Not temporarily. Not the way you run out of answers before you think a little harder and find one. I mean, I had reached the absolute end of what my conscious, educated, reasoning mind could offer me. I had studied. Lord, I had studied philosophy, theology, psychology, the works of Troward and Quimby and James and Emerson. I had filled notebooks. I had argued ideas in lecture halls. I had counseled others through their darkness while quietly carrying my own. And that night, in that room, with the rain coming down and the lamp throwing shadows on the wall, I put my head in my hands and I said, out loud, to no one I could see, I don't know. I genuinely do not know. And in that surrender, in that complete, ego-dissolving admission of not knowing, something happened. Not a voice. Not a vision. Nothing dramatic enough for a film, but a stillness. A quality of silence that felt different from ordinary silence. Fuller, warmer, as though the room had been empty and something had quietly entered it. And into that stillness came a thought, not constructed by me, not assembled from anything I'd been reading, but arriving whole the way a piece of music arrives complete. You have never been alone in this. The intelligence that runs the universe runs through you. You have been standing at the ocean asking for a glass of water. I sat with that for a very long time. Now I want to be precise with you here, because this is the point where people sometimes drift into vagueness, and vagueness is the enemy of understanding. When I speak of infinite intelligence, I am not speaking of something remote, something that exists in a cathedral or a mountaintop or a distant theological abstraction. I am not asking you to adopt a religion or abandon one. I am speaking of something that the greatest minds across every tradition and every century have pointed toward, often in different languages, using different symbols, arriving from different directions, but always pointing at the same extraordinary reality. There is an intelligence woven into the fabric of existence itself. It is the intelligence that knows how to turn a single cell into a complete human being, with a nervous system of breathtaking complexity, with eyes that can perceive color and depth and beauty, with a heart that beats without being asked, with an immune system that fights wars you never know are being fought on your behalf. You did not design that. Your conscious mind did not supervise that construction. Something else did. Something that knew, with absolute precision and zero uncertainty, exactly what to do. That intelligence did not stop at your skin. It is in you. It is you at the deepest level. And your subconscious mind is the instrument through which that intelligence operates in your individual life. Think about what that means. Really think about it. When you impress your subconscious mind with a clear, feeling-saturated, genuinely believed desire, you are not simply triggering a psychological mechanism. You are activating a connection to something that knows how to build, how to heal, how to attract, how to arrange, how to orchestrate circumstances in ways that your conscious mind could never plan or predict. I have watched this happen too many times to call it coincidence. I have seen men and women, ordinary men and women, no different from anyone in this room, who learn to work with this intelligence consciously, deliberately, and with understanding, and whose lives transformed in ways that defied every rational explanation. A woman in California, a nurse, practical and unsentimental as they come, who had been told she would never walk without pain again after a severe spinal injury. She came to understand these laws. She began impressing her subconscious every night with the vivid, felt image of herself walking freely, painlessly, with strength and grace. She did not do this with desperate pleading. She did it with calm, knowing conviction, the way you feel when you plant a seed in good soil and you know it will grow because that is what seeds in good soil do. 18 months later, her physicians were using words like inexplicable and remarkable recovery. She smiled and said, "I knew the infinite intelligence in my subconscious knew how to heal me. I simply gave it the instruction and got out of the way." Now, getting out of the way. That phrase deserves its own moment. Because this is where most people stumble. Even the ones who have begun to understand these laws. Even the ones who are genuinely trying. They impress the subconscious with a desire, and then they supervise it to death. They plant the seed, and then they dig it up every 3 days to check if it's growing. They pray, and then they spend the next 48 hours anxiously scanning their circumstances for evidence, and when the evidence doesn't arrive on their schedule, they conclude it isn't working, and they plant a seed of doubt directly on top of the seed of faith. And the garden, faithful, obedient, non-judgmental as always, grows the doubt. Infinite intelligence does not operate on your timeline. It operates on the timeline of rightness, the precise, perfect unfolding that brings what you have genuinely impressed upon your subconscious in the manner that serves not just your immediate want but your deepest good. Your job is to plant with conviction, to water with feeling, and then to trust. Not passively, not lazily, but with the active, working trust of a farmer who has done everything right and now allows the season to do its work. I want to give you a practical understanding of how to access this intelligence. How to actually open that channel, not theoretically, but in the real hours of your real life. There are moments in every day when the door between your conscious mind and your subconscious, between your ordinary awareness and this deeper intelligence, is naturally, beautifully open. The first is the period just before sleep. That drowsy, drifting threshold between waking and dreaming, what the psychologists call the hypnagogic state. In those moments, the critical, analytical, doubting faculty of your conscious mind grows quiet. The guard steps away from the gate, and whatever you introduce into your mind at that moment sinks directly into the subconscious without resistance. This is not a small thing. This is one of the most powerful moments of your entire day. And most people spend it replaying arguments, scrolling through anxieties, or consuming content that plants seeds they would never consciously choose. The second moment is the period just after waking. Before the day's noise rushes in. Before the phone, before the obligations, before the mental machinery of ordinary life cranks back into motion, there is a window, sometimes just 10 minutes, when your subconscious is still near the surface, still receptive, still soft. These 2 windows, used consciously, used with understanding, are worth more than hours of daytime effort. Infinite intelligence is not hiding from you. It has never been hiding from you. It is as close as your next breath, as available as the silence between your thoughts. The only thing that has ever stood between you and its full operation in your life is the quality of what you have been impressing upon it. And that brings me to the most practical question of this entire evening. How do you actually do it? How do you take everything we've talked about, the garden, the captain, the law of belief, the infinite intelligence humming at the core of your being, and turn it into something you can actually use? Tonight, tomorrow morning, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday when life is pressing in from every direction. That is what I want to give you now. Not theory. Not inspiration that evaporates by morning. A method. Precise. Tested. Drawn from the laws themselves. Put down everything you think you know about prayer. All of it. Set it aside, and let me show you something that will change how you speak to your own mind for the rest of your life. Put down everything you think you know about prayer. All of it. Set it aside. I mean that seriously. Whatever image just rose in your mind when I said that word, the posture, the language, the ritual, the childhood memory, gently set it down. Because what I am about to describe is something different, something older, in a sense, and something far more precise. I call it scientific prayer. And I want to be very clear about what that means, because the word scientific is not decoration. It is not me trying to make spirituality sound respectable to a skeptical audience. It means exactly what it says. Science is the understanding and application of law. When you understand a law, truly understand it, you can work with it deliberately, predictably, reproducibly. You are not hoping for a result. You are not begging for one. You are applying a principle that works the same way every time, for every person, without favoritism and without mystery, the same way a chemist applies a formula and gets a precise result. Scientific prayer is the deliberate, conscious, feeling-based impression of a specific idea upon the subconscious mind, using the laws we have been discussing tonight, with the full understanding of why it works and how it works. And when you do it correctly, when all the elements align, it works. Every time. Without exception. Now let me break it down. Let me show you the actual architecture of it. The first element is clarity. Your subconscious mind cannot build from a vague blueprint. If you go to an architect and say, "I'd like a house, something nice, not too big, not too small," you know, just good, that architect cannot build you anything. He needs specifics, dimensions, materials, layout, purpose. Your subconscious is the greatest architect in existence, but it requires the same thing: clarity, a specific, defined, concrete impression of what you are calling forth. Not, "I want more money," but, "I am guided to the perfect expression of my talents, and that expression provides me with abundant, continuous, increasing income." Not, "I want to be healthy," but, "Every organ, every cell, every system of my body is functioning in perfect harmony. I am vibrantly, completely, energetically well." Feel the difference. One is a vague wish. The other is a blueprint. One gives the architect nothing to work with. The other gives him everything. The second element is feeling. We have touched on this already, but I want to go deeper here, because this is the element most people underestimate. Most people treat feeling as the bonus, the nice-to-have that makes the process more enjoyable. They are wrong. Feeling is not the bonus. Feeling is the current that carries the thought into the subconscious. Without feeling, a thought is just noise. It sits on the surface of the mind and evaporates. With feeling, with genuine, embodied, present-tense emotional engagement, a thought becomes a command. It penetrates. It roots. It activates. This is why the subconscious responds so powerfully to fear. Fear is not intellectually processed, it is felt. In the chest. In the stomach. In the skin. And that feeling drives the thought deep, deep into the subconscious, which is precisely why fearful thinking is so destructive and so persistent. You must use the same mechanism, but consciously, deliberately in the direction you choose. When you pray scientifically, when you impress your subconscious with your desire, you must feel it as already real, not as something you are reaching for, not as something you hope will happen someday, but as something that is present, actual, already true in the interior world from which the exterior world is always, always built. I know that sounds like a stretch. I know the gap between where you are and where you want to be can feel enormous. But remember, the subconscious does not know the difference between a vividly imagined reality and a physically present one. The neuroscience confirms what the mystics always knew: the inner experience, felt with sufficient intensity, registers as real. And what registers as real in the subconscious becomes the blueprint for what manifests in the physical world. The third element is the threshold moment. We talked about this briefly before, but now I want to give it to you as a tool you can use tonight. The most powerful time to impress your subconscious is in that twilight state just before sleep. Here is exactly what I want you to do. Tonight, when you lie down, when the room is dark and quiet and your body begins to relax, do not let your mind wander into tomorrow's problems. Do not replay today's frustrations. Instead, with great gentleness and deliberate intention, bring to your mind the single most important thing you want to call forth in your life right now. Hold it as an image. See it. Make it vivid. Make it specific. And then, this is the crucial part. Feel what it would feel like to already have it. Not the desperate, grasping feeling of wanting. The calm, full, satisfied feeling of having. The quiet joy. The deep peace. The settled sense of, yes, this is real. This is mine. It is done. Hold that feeling. Breathe into it. Let it fill the room inside your chest and drift into sleep inside that feeling. You have just planted a seed in the most fertile soil available to any human being. You have spoken directly to your subconscious at the moment it is most receptive. You have handed the blueprint to the architect at the moment he is most ready to begin building. Do that for 30 nights, genuinely, feelingly, consistently, and tell me your life has not begun to shift. But now I need to address something. Because some of you are sitting there with a very honest, very important objection forming in your mind. And the objection sounds something like this. Dr. Murphy, this all makes sense. I understand the garden. I understand the blueprint. I understand the threshold moment. But here is my problem. The moment I try to feel peaceful and abundant and whole, my mind floods with the opposite. The fear rushes in. The old voice starts talking. The doubt shows up like an uninvited guest who knows exactly where you hide the spare key. I hear you. I have been you. And this is precisely where the law of substitution becomes the most important tool in your entire mental toolkit. The law of substitution states this, and listen carefully, because it is simple, but it is profound. The conscious mind cannot hold two opposing thoughts simultaneously with equal emotional force. Read that again. Let it land. You cannot, at the same moment, with the same intensity, feel both fear and peace, both lack and abundance, both sickness and wholeness. The mind can flicker between them, yes. It can alternate rapidly, yes. But it cannot genuinely, fully, emotionally inhabit both at once. Which means, and here is the power, the instant you introduce a new thought with sufficient feeling, the old thought must yield. Not eventually. Not after a long battle. Immediately. In that moment. In that breath. This is not suppression. This is not denial. I am not asking you to pretend the fear doesn't exist or that the old voice isn't real. It is real. It has been your companion for years, perhaps decades. It knows your name and your history and every wound you've tried to hide. But you do not fight it. Fighting gives it energy. Resistance makes it stronger. You substitute. The moment the fear thought arrives, you do not argue with it, you do not analyze it, you do not try to disprove it. You simply, immediately, deliberately introduce its replacement. A specific, chosen, feeling-carried thought that occupies the same mental space. Fear says, you're going to fail. You do not say, "No, I won't, and here is my evidence." You say internally, feelingly, with as much genuine conviction as you can access in that moment, "Infinite intelligence is guiding me to my perfect outcome. I am being led." And you feel it, even a little. Even if it's just a flicker. That flicker is enough to break the circuit. Then you do it again the next time. And again. And again. I want to be honest with you. The first few times you do this, it will feel mechanical. It will feel like you are pushing a boulder uphill. The old grooves in the subconscious are deep. They have been carved by years, sometimes lifetimes, of repetition. They will not simply smooth over because you tried a new thought once. But here is what I need you to understand about grooves. A groove is just a path that has been walked many times. And a new path, walked consistently, walked with feeling, walked with understanding, eventually becomes the groove. The subconscious does not favor the old path because it loves it. It favors it because it is familiar. The moment the new path becomes equally familiar, equally worn, equally automatic, the subconscious switches allegiance without drama and without fanfare. It simply begins growing the new thing. Because that is what it does. That is all it has ever done. It grows what is planted. And now, finally, truly, with understanding in your hands rather than hope in your pocket, you know how to plant. There is one more thing I need to tell you before this night is over. Something I have been building toward from the very first word. Something that, if you truly hear it, if it lands in the place where real things land, will change not just how you think, but how you understand your own existence. The blueprint of your greatness was not drawn by your circumstances. It was not drawn by your history. It was not drawn by your failures or your fears or the voices that told you to expect less. It was drawn long before any of those things existed. And I need to tell you what that means for you right now, tonight in this room. The blueprint was drawn before you were born. I need you to hear that. Not as poetry. Not as a comforting phrase designed to make you feel better on a difficult evening. I mean it as a structural, spiritual, observable fact, one that the greatest minds who ever lived arrived at independently from different corners of the earth, in different centuries, using different words, and always, always reaching the same conclusion. Before your first breath. Before your first word. Before your first wound, your first failure, your first moment of doubt, there was already, within the fabric of your existence, a blueprint, a divine original, a perfect, complete, fully formed version of what you were created to be and to express in this world. It was not lost when life got hard. It was not canceled when you made mistakes. It was not revised downward when someone told you that you weren't enough. It is still there, right now. At this very moment, as intact and as perfect as the moment it was drawn, waiting with the infinite patience of something that exists outside of time, for you to stop arguing with it and start building from it. I have spent my life in rooms with people who are suffering, not always dramatically, sometimes quietly. The dignified suffering of a person who has simply accepted less than they were made for, and built a reasonable, functional, respectable life around that acceptance. And in all those years, in all those rooms, I have never once met a person who did not, somewhere beneath the scar tissue of disappointment and the armor of practicality, carry within them the memory of something more. A dream they stopped mentioning because it felt foolish. A capacity they stopped expressing because nobody around them had room for it. A version of themselves they glimpsed once, briefly, in a moment of unexpected courage or unexpected grace, and then talked themselves out of believing was real. You know what I'm describing. You know it because you felt it. That flicker, that pull, that persistent, embarrassing, beautiful sense that you were made for something that your current life has not yet had the courage to contain. That is not fantasy. That is not ego. That is not the dangerous indulgence of unrealistic thinking. That is the blueprint speaking. That is the original design pressing against the walls of the life you've settled for, not to torment you but to call you, to remind you, to refuse, with extraordinary stubbornness, to let you forget what you actually are. I think about a young man I knew. Brilliant. Genuinely, extraordinarily brilliant, the kind of mind that should have been lighting up rooms and changing lives from the moment it arrived in the world. But he grew up in a home where brilliance was suspicious, where standing out was dangerous, where the safest thing a person could do was make themselves small enough not to be noticed. And so he learned, the way all children learn the rules of survival in their particular world. He learned to dim it, to hide it, to apologize for it, subtly, constantly, in 100 small ways every single day. By the time he was an adult, he had become so practiced at smallness that he genuinely believed it was his nature. He came to me not because he thought he could change, but because some part of him, some stubborn, unkillable part, refused to stop knocking on the door from the inside. We worked together for months. Not on his circumstances. Not on his career or his relationships or his finances, though all of those eventually transformed beyond recognition. We worked on one thing only: the blueprint. We worked on helping him see, really see, at the level of felt conviction rather than intellectual agreement, that the smallness was learned, and that what was learned could be unlearned. That beneath the years of careful diminishment, the original design was completely untouched, waiting, intact, ready to be built from the moment he was willing to hand it the authority it had always deserved. The day he walked into that room a different man, not performing confidence, not rehearsing it, but genuinely, quietly, unshakably inhabiting himself, I recognized something I have seen many times and never grown tired of seeing: a human being remembering what they are. And that is what I want for you. Tonight. Not someday. Tonight. I want you to make a decision, not the kind you announce to other people, not the kind you post about or discuss or plan to begin on Monday, but the quiet, internal, non-negotiable kind. The kind that happens in the deepest part of you, below language, below performance, in the place where real things are decided. The decision that says, I am going to stop building from the wrong blueprint. Because here is what I know after decades of living these laws and watching others live them: the suffering is not in the circumstances. The suffering is in the gap between who you are pretending to be and who you were designed to be. Close that gap, even partially, even imperfectly, even gradually, and something in you exhales for the first time in years. Something settles. Something that has been braced against the world begins, slowly, to open. I want to bring everything together now, because we have covered a great deal of ground tonight, and I want you to leave here not with a collection of interesting ideas, but with a living understanding that you can carry into tomorrow morning. The subconscious mind is the garden. It grows without judgment, without preference, without pause, whatever is planted in it with feeling and repetition and genuine belief. Your conscious mind is the captain. It has authority. It has always had authority. The only question has ever been whether it was exercising that authority deliberately or surrendering it by default. The law of belief is the law that governs what the garden receives as its instructions. Not what you say. Not what you perform. What you genuinely, deeply, feelingly believe in the marrow of your assumptions about reality. Infinite intelligence is the source. the ocean beneath the river, the power that animates the subconscious and responds with breathtaking precision and creativity to what is genuinely impressed upon it. It is not distant. It is not reserved for the especially holy or the especially gifted. It is as available to you as it has ever been to anyone who ever drew breath on this earth. Scientific prayer is the method, the precise, conscious, feeling-saturated impression of a chosen reality upon the subconscious, especially in those golden threshold moments when the door between your conscious and deeper mind swings naturally open. And the law of substitution is the tool. The understanding that you do not fight the old thoughts, you replace them. Immediately, consistently, with feeling, until the new groove is deeper than the old one, until the new path is more familiar than the one that led you somewhere you never wanted to go. These are not theories. They are not the hopeful opinions of an optimistic man who wants to believe the world is kind. They are laws, operating right now. In you, around you, through you. The only variable, the only thing that has ever been the variable, is whether you are working with them or against them. I am going to leave you with something I have never forgotten. A moment that happened late in my life, late enough that I had earned the right to call it wisdom rather than wishfulness. I was walking early one morning through a garden, a real physical garden this time, not a metaphor, and the light was doing that particular thing it does at dawn, where everything seems outlined in gold and the ordinary world looks briefly, achingly, like something sacred. And I stopped, and I looked at a single flower,